I was pursuing a PhD in English and American literature, and I was writing my dissertation on 19th century fiction and pseudoscience, or what I call rejected knowledge, spiritualism, mesmerism, and I was looking for stories that deal with those topics from this period. And one of the authors I was looking at was Louisa May Alcott. Some people don't know this, but Louisa May Alcott, before she wrote Little Women in 1868, for about 15 years, she wrote a series of genre fiction, thrillers, mysteries. One of Louisa May Alcott's early biographers in the 1940s, Madeline Stern, and her partner, Leona Raustenberg, were searching for a pseudonym because they knew that she had written these thrillers. In fact, there's clues all over Louisa May Alcott's work. In Little Women, she writes about how Jo, the character who stands in for Louisa May Alcott, is writing these thrillers. And so Madeline Stern and Leona Raustenberg are on the hunt for a pseudonym. And they go into Harvard's library, the Houghton Library, and they find a letter from one of Louisa's editors that says the pseudonym, and the pseudonym is A.M. Barnard, and they shout in the library and they're so excited, and then they go out and have a cigarette, and then they realize, okay, we found it. And so then these two women, over the next several decades, go through all of the New England periodicals of that period, and they find all of these stories written by that pseudonym. So from the 1940s through the 1990s, they were uncovering stories that she had written. The pseudonym that she used for most of the thrillers is A.M. Barnard. The pseudonym that she used for some of her nonfiction Civil War stories is Tribulation Periwinkle. The pseudonym she used for some of her poetry is Flora Fairfield. Publishing things under pseudonyms, publishing things anonymously, asking people to guess. It was sort of like a game.
Women in those days were not supposed to write thrilling stories. That was the purview of men. So Louisa and other women that may have done this would use either a male pseudonym or at least an androgynous one with just the first initials, because many men did that, and that way it would seem as if it were a man. She did love to explore the dark side of life, but she also appreciated deeply the goodness within life. So Louisa left many clues, though. She wrote journal entries. She wrote many, many letters that have survived, and through accounts from contemporaries, too. Because she was so famous so early on, people did not discard things. Letters they received from her were saved. Asking who Louisa May Alcott was is a wonderful question because there are many long answers. To many, Louisa, once they get to know more about her, is a complex and mysterious person.
Madeline Stern has a collection of Louisa May Alcott's thrillers. It's a 750-page collection, and she has an introduction to that collection. And in the introduction, she writes, "These are all the thrillers that I found, but there's probably more out there. And here's a few that I think are still out there. One of them probably has the title A Phantom Hand or A Phantom Face, because that title was listed in Louisa May Alcott's journals, and it's also mentioned in the text of Little Women. Phantom, it sounds like spiritualism and mesmerism, which is the topic of my dissertation. I might as well go look for that. So I wrote myself a little note, find this.
In many cases, the American Antiquarian Society is the only institution that might hold a specific newspaper issue. Not everything got preserved. Sometimes only one copy exists, and so being able to hold on to that material here and being able to make it available digitally to researchers allows it to continue living. It basically gives it a republication, a new form of existence, and a new way to be preserved and kept.
I went to the American Antiquarian Society's digital database and I searched The Phantom, and there was a story called The Phantom. The Phantom had all of the signature traits of Alcott's work, but there was a problem. The name was under the byline E.H. Gould, which was not Alcott. So I went to sleep, and then sometime later I woke up and I thought, oh, maybe this is Alcott. Maybe it's another pseudonym that we hadn't known about. And so I started reading the story again, and I realized it sounds like it possibly could be an Alcott story to me. Okay, so the evidence for the Gould stories are, first of all, the Phantom title, which is in her journals, is the title of this story. So it is the right title. It appears in the right periodical, The Olive Branch, which she published under, and it is in almost exactly the right time. It's published in early 1860, and in her journal she records placing the story there in late 1859. The other Gould stories have some contextual evidence for those stories being Alcott. For example, there's one nonfiction piece called The Wayside, which was the name of her house that they lived in before Orchard House. And it's a nostalgic ode to a home, so it makes sense that she would be talking about her own home. There's stories where the last name of the character is Alcott, like in The Phantom and in another story. And all of the stories appear in this short period of time where she was publishing less in other periodicals. And so there's a sort of gap in her publication records that fit quite precisely by the Gould stories.
I think it's important because there are so many untold stories. There are so many mysteries. There are so many things that are written under a pseudonym. There are so many stories that we don't know. And anytime that you can discover and find one of them and add to the understanding of somebody, that's exciting.
When Leona Rostenberg discovered A.M. Barnard as a pseudonym for Louisa's thrillers, it was 1942. So now, all these years later, Max Chapnick discovers this name, E.H. Gould. And he's not 100% sure. That's why he says he didn't find the smoking gun. Louisa, she takes pieces of her own life that she thinks people aren't going to necessarily know and uses them in her stories. So there are clues such as that that lead me to think it's likely.
I love that the mystery may never be solved. People sometimes frame the mystery as, oh, now that you've found this, what are you going to do next? But no, I haven't actually found it because we don't know if Gould is actually Alcott, and we may never know. So there isn't a case closed here, and there may never be. It remains unsolved, and it may always remain unsolved, which makes it more fun.